Hi, I'm Mary Greendale, and welcome to Just Thinking. What, you say? The set doesn't look right? Well, you're right about that. Let me say that we have done something different today. We have a co-host, Chryso, Lawless, who is normally doing Heartbeat of Holliston, and we have two guests today, so this layout worked better. So today we're going to talk with folks about embrace culture. And for anybody who has the history book, and I'd like to take a moment to plug the history book, the 300th anniversary history book, this little number of 488 pages, we're down to about 98 copies. So if you want to buy one, get to Fisk's or Outpost Farm. But anyway, right in here on page 361, we have a whole conversation about Christa, numbers at the time, Peterson, Preston. There we go. I'll get it. Easier when it was numbers.
Easier when it was numbers, that's
but
for
anyway,
sure.
Christa Preston. And with her, now I'm really going to do well with this one, Stephen Kabenge. There we go. So we're going to talk about embrace culture from the beginning to today, and you are celebrating your 9th year, which is just astonishing to me because I can remember when you were here at the outset, and you came with your mom, and it was like, I don't know, it was sort of idealistic, this young girl with this idea in her head and so forth, and a vision. And look at you now. So I hope nobody really questioned that you were going to be able to do it, because you're doing it.
We are definitely doing it. I don't know if we even knew at the time what we would be doing 9 years from now, or that we'd still be here 9 years from now. But
sure. Well, let's start back there in the beginning. What motivated you to even try to make this your mission?
Yeah. So there were a few things that went into play. One is the disability space. So we have special needs in my family. I was very close to that community while I was here in Holliston. And when I left Holliston, I had unintentionally removed myself from that community. Go to college, you just get wrapped up in your own life. So one part of it was missing that connection that I had when I was here. But then another part is Holliston High, especially, more so than other high schools I've seen, emphasizes volunteering. So I remember when I was putting out my college applications, they were like, but what volunteering have you done? So I knew that was going to be important, and I didn't have an opportunity when I was here to go volunteer abroad, but I knew that I wanted to, so that little seed had been planted. And then I really have to say, Holliston, for some of us, becomes a major source of confidence. I really kind of grew to believe in this town that I could, if I wanted to do something, I could set out and I would accomplish that. It would be hard, but I could get there. And so when I made the choice to go to Africa, a lot of people said to me, are you afraid? Are you nervous? And I was like, no, you set out to do something, you work hard, you're going to figure it out. You're going to find some way to do it. So it was perhaps a flawed confidence, but a confidence I had at the time that let me go out and get this started.
What did you need when you got there? What did you need to get established? And how did you go about getting that? You're in a totally different country. What happened to get what you needed? When
I first started, I was volunteering at a special needs school. And so I was really just there to observe what was happening and help where I could. And I was determined to do that for a year, just because of the population that I was working with. If you come in and out of their lives, it's pretty disruptive. So I wanted to give them a consistent year of observation. And it was actually at this school that I met Stephen, who, with another individual named Hawa, took me outside of the walls of the school into the community and showed me what the reality was in the community, which was a very harsh reality of negative stigma that these children were facing. And when I met Stephen and we did this, that's when I knew what we needed was community interventions. We needed to find a way to support people going into the community and just educating families about what the different disabilities were. So I knew I had to come back, fundraise as quickly as possible, get back out to Uganda with whatever we could fundraise, which led us to our first event here in Holliston, actually,
Right.
where we were able to raise enough funding to put together a team and to start doing our first community campaigning.
Wow.
So what age group were these children? All ages?
What age groups would you say we're working with now?
0 to 30?
Just 0 to 30, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
Yep. So what would be a typical day for one of these children versus what it was before Embrace Culture involved them?
Yeah, I'll let you take
Yeah.
that one, Stephen.
Children with disabilities are hidden in their homes. So when we came in, we started identifying children and bringing them on board and treating them as human beings. So we trained them through different skills for independent living, such as brushing, bathing, and so many more, to put them into routine, because most of the things are being done for them. We're like, no, we have to see the potential of these children. So I'm happy that for the 9 years of Embrace Culture, we've trained a big number of children, and we've had close to 30 go through our Amani Center and in different rehabilitation programs. So they are now able to look after themselves as opposed to how it was before when people had to do stuff for them.
So they were kept in the home, they were, their parents or whatever did everything because they didn't think they had any ability to feed themselves, wash themselves. Is that what you're saying? And so they were very isolated.
Definitely. They looked at them as objects of charity, hiding their potentials.
Okay.
Yeah.
Were the children abused emotionally or physically or otherwise by other people?
Yes, they are abused emotionally, psychologically, sexually. We've had cases of such abuse. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're different and there isn't sort of a network for them?
Because they have disability and people think they can't communicate, and also the society still looks at them as people who are unable. So they just treat them as objects.
And so there's probably a power play going on. If some people want to feel powerful, they use these children maybe as objects. Yeah.
And it's interesting that it starts right away with their families. The uncles, the fathers have abused these children. Even just last week there was a case of sexual abuse to someone with disability, by the father.
There's also, especially when we first started, just an extreme misunderstanding of what these disabilities are. So we most commonly saw autism, Down syndrome, and cerebral palsy.
Okay.
Those words didn't exist in the country. There was no word for autism. There was no word for Down syndrome. They'd use words like...
They use the KA things, which means an object in the local language. Ka, meaning a tiny thing. Yeah, so we tried bringing the humanity face onto individuals that we serve.
What a challenge.
So, yeah, so they...
It seemed like a challenge, especially coming from the disability space here in the U.S., where it can take a lot of advocacy to overcome an obstacle. But we found through our community engagements, just because they didn't have the words, they didn't know what these things were. If we could just give families especially that basic knowledge, the way that a child was treated completely changed very, very quickly.
Wow.
We're talking days that suddenly this child would be brought into the community, brought out of that hiding, because now parents could finally say, this is what this is. I have a child with disability. I don't have a curse. I don't have an evil spirit. I have a child with a disability, and that has some rights in Uganda. So now I know I can start to fight for my child and fight for these rights.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So the parents, were they reluctant at first? How did they begin to engage with that mission that you had? Or,
Well, when you are aware, you know what to do. Just like Christa said, most parents were not aware. So whatever intervention that they tried, they always thought that it would be the best to help their children out. Of course, right now we are debunking the myths and stereotypes. It's a process, but at least we are getting there gradually, not the same way as it was. Because before we met one of our clients who was tied on a tree for 10 years because they have autism. And it's not because it was a punishment, but the parent thought that was the only way to ensure safety of that child. Yeah, so we came in, trained the parent on the different skills that the child can learn and everything. So now the child is no longer tied up. Yeah.
That's a great way to talk about it. They're not tied up anymore. Yeah.
So, excuse me, have your outreach efforts changed, or are they still the same, and how do you go about implementing them? Who does it?
Yes, they've definitely changed. From the beginning, it was a lot about just going into a community and having these community meetings where we would call people together and say, hi, talk about what the different disabilities are, encourage them to bring their children out. Stephen has now taken on more challenging roles than that, to go so far as to fight the government. So he was part of a legal battle very recently that is holding the government accountable for providing services for these children. So, I mean, Stephen, you can talk. You're the one, he is the one. How are we doing it? It's Stephen. Stephen is the one in the community.
First of all, we work with different stakeholders in the community. We don't leave the civil society organizations behind. But also, we feel that if you want to go beyond, you have to take a risk. So we took a risk of suing the government to ensure that persons with autism and other disabilities have access to community-based services. Here in America, everything is available, but in Uganda, it's very different. You have to make sure that you utilize the little available resources to make an impact on a child with autism. So we filed that case, and on March 15, we got a ruling whereby the High Court had instructed the government to establish community-based services for persons with autism in Uganda. And we took on the mantle to develop the guidelines that will be used in the process.
That's astonishing.
That's big.
That's really big. Absolutely.
Right.
So what are the challenges to sustaining this?
The biggest challenge is limited government interest, because we've had so many initiatives that we've come up. For example, the disability toll-free line, whereby someone just calls and they're able to screen their child for disability. We've also had those guidelines. And as Embrace Culture, we hope these are not for us. They are for Uganda. And therefore, the government should take up this and ensure that it's disseminated in different parts of the country, so that we have more children identified. Recently, in one of the refugee settlements, we rolled out the screening number, and we identified 350 children who are at risk of having disability just in one small region. You can imagine how far that can go if the government took this on and maybe disseminated it to different parts of the country. The second challenge is that parents are devastated. They've had so many promises from different people, and they've been disappointed because their hopes are always so high. So it's always a challenge trying to take them through counseling, because we do psychosocial support. Remember, when you get someone with disability, you need that counseling. So we take them through that psychosocial support to ensure that there is acceptance. Without acceptance, we can't do anything. Yeah, so that process is also a bit long. Acceptance, and then their expectations. Those are the big challenges. And also the funding, because all these activities need funding to go on. Yeah.
What's the population of Uganda?
35 million?
Oh, it's now 42, 43 million.
It's a lot of people with a lot of disabilities stretched over a huge area. Wow.
And one of your most recent initiatives was going to a refugee camp and identifying, and those people are moving around all the time. So that was
its own, I mean, the refugee settlement is its own ecosystem.
Yep.
It's so different than what we were doing in the rest of the country. But it did showcase that some of the tools and things we've developed in Uganda have that more universal applicability.
Yeah.
So we could take it to the refugee setting, which means we can take it out through East Africa, we can take it out through West Africa, and then hopefully South America. I mean, I think one of the most astonishing things to me in doing this work was just how significant the need is, not just in Uganda, but in the developing context in general.
Yeah, and ideally, if something can work in a multicultural setting, that means it can work anywhere.
So that does lead us to another of our comments, was that how is it possible to replicate your work right here in Holliston or in the U.S.?
Yeah, there's some things that we can definitely learn from the Ugandan context. And a lot of that is a bit of what Stephen was talking about, the idea of independence. And again, having someone in the family that had severe disabilities, we had so many services available to us, we perhaps didn't push for a level of independence that was possible. So I think there's some lessons we can take from seeing what individuals with disabilities are accomplishing there, and wondering what services, how we need to adapt our services to give them more freedom to see what they want to do and how they'll go about doing it. And I think another huge lesson is we're just seeing universally advocacy. Advocacy is what is going to make the change here in Holliston for families who are impacted and need more support. And in Uganda, I mean, families need support. That is the thing you'll hear over and over again. So developing families to become advocates, developing individuals with disabilities to become advocates, that needs to happen around the world still.
Exactly. And what I'm excited about for you is that we talked earlier that you can import your techniques and your technological, your easy technology, and it can work in everywhere, in all developing countries. Things like the cell phone.
I was going to say, text
Explain
messaging.
that.
Who doesn't text message?
Right.
We have a way to use text messaging to help parents identify if their child's at risk, which, again, even here in the U.S., parents don't know what's happening, and they want to find resources. Yes, we have the internet, but it's so cluttered and littered with so many opinions. You just want to know what's happening. So through text messaging, parents can find out, is their child showing signs that there could be a risk of disability? And if they are, who do they contact? Who near them can they find that can provide immediate assistance? And they can also access another one of our technologies, which is called Kulture, which is just a library of information that they can go read, very simple format, to find out what's happening in their own family.
Do you provide phones? Do you provide basic cell phones?
Yeah, because the technology that we use is more of the feature phones, the small basic phones, and it's working perfect.
Yeah, in the refugee camps, we definitely provided the phones.
Yeah, we did.
They are very common in Uganda. Most people have access to a phone these days.
That's great.
So we just wanted to develop technology that worked for them versus technology that works on an iPhone when that's just not there yet.
Yeah, well, and to some degree, you're almost making it unattractive for it to be there, because then you get all the cloudy messages coming in. Now you start getting people on this side who are saying this, and somebody else is saying that, and confuses the whole message. You know, some of what I just heard you say, and I want to make sure I'm not overreaching. In terms of those of us who live in an environment where there are resources and so forth, and we become maybe a little too dependent on the fact that there are resources, and that maybe it's like helicopter parenting, that we end up doing more than we need to and don't even know it. Not that we do it malevolently or in any way, shape, or form, but it's just that it's there and we're worried and we want to do the most. We want to do the most and the best.
Yeah, the story that always impacted me personally was, in my family, the individual that had severe needs lived in our home almost my entire life. And it was when he was 40 that we made the decision to move him into a group home. That decision comes with a lot of judgment here in the U.S. A lot of people think that's the wrong thing to do because you're pushing the responsibility to someone else. You are the family, you should do that care. So we met a lot of criticism as a family when that decision was made. His level of independence that he developed living in his own home was something we never imagined that he could do. And I always held on to a little bit of guilt with that because I wondered what else had we decided for him, instead of letting him say, I want to go live and try it and just see if it works for me or not. Because, again, like you said, we thought the right thing to do was to keep him in our home, and we learned for him, the right thing was different.
Wow, that's such a lesson.
That's profound.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It really. So what does it feel like to be back here in Holliston talking about the back when and where you are today? Must feel good, I hope.
Surreal is the best. I mean, I never imagined we would be where we are now. I am so honored to have Stephen visiting and here beside me. He's been a major part of the work. I was able to transition back to living in the U.S. after 7 years in Uganda. Just before pandemic, I was able to move home.
Wow.
Because Stephen and other leaders like him have taken over the work in country, and now I can do capacity building and grant support, but there's leaders and experts that Stephen has become himself and is developing in the country. That is the thing I never had in my mind of what would happen. I didn't see the future leaders. And now I've got to bring one back to where it all began.
That's awesome.
What does it feel like to come to where it all began? Is it different than what you imagined?
Well, today I just told her that it's unbelievable that I'm here because for all the time, I remember when we were discussing at the beginning of Embrace Culture, she mentioned that, but one time you would come and be in the States with us. And I'm like, no, that will never happen. So I came in the States in July, but every time I'm texting with her, I'm like, am I still dreaming? But it's always good to be here, and I've been able to see some persons with disabilities being supported, and I can say America is blessed with lots of resources. However, the biggest challenge is that when you have all the resources, your mind isn't triggered to think in a different direction. You always have the resources and you think that that's the level or the limit of this person with disability. However, if at all you withdraw some of the resources, you'll see the magic that that person is able to do.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that is really stunning.
Yeah, like you said, that's pretty profound.
It is. It's
exciting.
to make it, and I think you're right that it's just turning your mind to go this way and look at it and say, oh, all right.
Yeah. In closing, although I know we could talk for so much more, first I want to say that that program that you just described where you ended up training the trainers to be the leaders is what I think every organization or every not-for-profit wants, aspires to.
Yep.
And you have done that. It's great. It's nice it's good you're in that position.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I should say it in a joking manner that sometime I'll go back to the States and I'll let you guys take over. And like, Christa, I'm not going anywhere. She said that in 2018, 19? Yeah, she said that.
Yeah. But the goal is for you to be able to do that, and not just you, but
And
more
not
of
for
you.
me. I love seeing things sustainable. I love sustainable initiatives. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah. So what advice would you, bringing back to home now, would you give a high school student today who wants to make a difference?
Yeah, try it. It's the best advice I can give is just go out and try it. I knew I wanted to do disability. I knew I wanted to be abroad. I had no idea what it was going to become, but I thought to myself, let's give it a go. If I fail, so be it. And then ask for help.
Yeah.
And I think what has made Embrace Culture successful is our willingness to learn from other people and ask, what do you know? What way can you support if it's volunteering, if it's funding, if it's knowledge base, if it's partnership? I mean, how we spent, I think, like a year just searching the country for partners to work with. So just ask for help, give it a try. If that doesn't work, ask for help again, try a different way. That's what I'd say to all my high schoolers out there.
And that would work for whatever their passion is.
Yes,
If they want,
definitely.
it may not be disabilities, but it may be another volunteer need that they see happening. And English is a second language, whatever,
Yeah, you'll find
Yeah.
what your passion is. This one was mine. This is what touched my heart. And it was a lesson I had to learn when I was first starting, that it's not going to be what touches everybody's heart. But there is something that is going to touch theirs, and they're meant to go out and work for that thing. So, yeah.
What got you started in this? Sorry to...
I have a personal attachment to disability. When I was 8, I lost my nephew who had multiple disability, but even when he was laid to rest, it was on a different ground, because my family thought that the disability would spread to the rest of the people.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
It was
Separation of it.
Yeah, and as I
contagious.
started working, we're doing different projects, but still I had memories of my nephew, and persons with disabilities weren't targeted not until 2015 when I met with Christa. She was wearing a long green dress, very long. And then we took her out. I remember I even took her to a place across the water just to show her the situation in the country. And I'm glad that she accepted to be part of it. And we started driving the long train, which she kind of took a back seat in, but the train won't stop moving.
That's good. In fact, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's great. Well, it is a thrill to see you back.
Thank
It is
you.
thrilled to hear about this success, and I am absolutely convinced that there are lessons in here for all of us on this side of the big pond, or whatever we call it. So.
Most definitely. And there's also just huge appreciation to the Holliston community. It is still the biggest part of Embrace Culture. It was where we started, but from where we started, the word of mouth that has come from this community still makes up over 60% of our funding. So Holliston is a huge reason any of this has happened. We're really honored to be here, be back, and here with you both today.
Well, we will provide you both with the video and the podcast of today, and you can go ahead and use it to further expand your embrace here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you.
All right, folks. Well, I thought that one was a doozy. I really am. I am in awe of what Christa and Stephen now, but Christa, I am in awe of what you did and how you've done it. So thank you so much for being with us. Tell your folks to watch this one. This is a pretty touching story that I think should mean something to all of us. So take care. Be well.